Hello there. Welcome to episode 9 of the CyberLab Cybersecurity video series. I'm sat here with James Pascoe, one of my colleagues who works in Chess ICT, and we're going to be talking about identity and access management. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Adam.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks.
I don't know whether you want to give yourself a little bit of an intro to the...
Sure. Well, I've been working in IT for 2 decades now. I know I look too young for that.
Oh.
But in particular now around cloud-based identities and modern workplace environment. And yeah, it's amazing how the technology has changed over the last 20
Isn't it
years.
just? And it continues to do so on a daily basis.
Continues to do so at such a pace.
So with these webinars, I tend to have a sort of a 3-question format. We talk about why, what it is, and then how we actually do it. So in this case, why do we need identity and access management?
Well, the user credential is the gateway, really, nowadays. It always used to be that you'd protect a premises or you'd protect your building with a big secure door or a firewall. But now with cloud technologies, you've got remote working, and the emphasis really becomes on protecting the ability to log on. You want to make it as easy for users to log on as they can, but you want to really restrict the bad guys from getting into your network.
So if you make it too hard for users to get in, then poor help desk gets kicked to death.
Well, precisely, yeah. So yeah, you want it to be flexible but secure at the same time, and they're two opposing ends of this.
Yeah, and that's why the likes of Microsoft have done a lot of work to make this as seamless as possible.
Huge amounts of work.
So what we're talking about really is that it's establishing trust in order for users and devices to access services, applications, or data. And I guess as well, conversely, it can be used to deny access to those resources if that's what we want to do. With the old explicit deny, as we used to do in the olden days, which was always a highway to hell, really.
Yeah, it's about granular control. It's about saying exactly who can access what and when, which is sort of the golden ticket, as it were.
Exactly, yeah. You've talked about controlling access. How do we actually do that now, without going too technical?
Sure. I mean, I suppose really you've got to define what identity is. It's not just a username and password anymore. It's not just your ability to log on. The identity can be a combination of things. It can be the device that the user's logged onto, the location that the user's at, the risk status of the device that the user's on. Yeah. So the identity per se is a very, very granular thing that you can control. It's not just my name's Joe, my password's password1. It's very granular in what you can define as an identity. And obviously the access bit is what you want that person on that device at that time in that location to be able to see. Yeah,
so it's control as well.
It's control. It's absolutely all about control. It's about saying who can access what and when, from where.
Cool, we're rattling through this. So the big question, and I suspect that this is where we're going to spend the majority of the time today talking about this. How do you do identity and access management? Because it sounds massively complex. We're talking about all these different variables that we've got in the mix: users, devices, location. We might even be talking about contextual, controls that we have on there, that if they're in this location, it will allow them to do this, but if they're in this location, it won't allow them to do that, or it will severely restrict what they're doing.
Yeah, so when I'm tackling this for a customer of mine, the first thing is all about the directory. It's about finding out exactly what you own, what devices you own, what users you have. Because once you know what good looks like, it's easy to restrict it to that.
Yeah.
One thing you find in a lot of organizations is they don't actually really have a definitive list of their users and computers. So
it's easy in larger organizations. This was a talking point for a later webinar, but this configuration drift and the fact that people are coming and going all the time, and IT are not necessarily always kept in the loop. If there's high turnover of staff or temporary staff coming and going, it's difficult to track.
Yeah, so you have users in your directory that no longer exist. But particularly with devices, it's not just a workstation at their desk in their office, you'll have mobile devices, you'll have tablets, they'll have a laptop, they'll have several PCs that they log on to. So the first task really is identifying your live users and all the devices that they use. Once you've got those and you can say they're trusted, then you've got a much better chance of saying, right, let's only allow those devices to connect.
It sounds very simple when you put it like that. So then once we've got an idea of what it is that we actually need to control in the environment, how do we then go about applying those controls? So what types of mechanisms would you typically use when you were sort of, let's talk, for example, for a Microsoft 365 customer, because that's what a lot of people who are watching this are probably going to be.
They are a big player in the game, yes. So Microsoft have something called conditional access. Conditional access is effectively the set of rules that you set to enable people to access resources. And quite literally, it says a series of conditions to say that if you're in this user group, if you're on this device or in this device group, and you want to access this particular resource, then these are the things you have to apply. Obviously, a big one is MFA. So for all users, apply MFA. But we can go quite granular onto what the device itself has to have configured. So again, we've talked about location. You can say you have to be within the UK, for example, is a great one because that stops rogue users.
Exactly.
From countries. But or you can say they have to be located within one of your actual offices to say they can only use their device when they're connected on a premises. But again, the device itself, you can say, well, actually, we've got antivirus run on that machine. We've got the knowledge of whether that machine is healthy or not. And you can say only healthy machines can connect, only healthy machines.
What do you mean by a healthy machine?
Well, machines that pass a series of conditions that you put in place. So if you've got, for example, Microsoft Defender on your device, it will accumulate all the knowledge it has about that device and give it a risk score and say, actually, you haven't updated your definitions in a period of time.
Right.
Or we have found some rogue software on your machine that we do not trust or is not authorized to run on your machine. Therefore, as a result of that, we're going to deny your access onto the systems or into the company data.
Would the patch status of the machine feed into that risk score?
Again, yeah, you can specify, that you have to have the latest Windows operating system, the latest security updates. Well, again, not just Windows, but again with iOS and Android, you can say they have to have the latest security patches on them. And again, with mobile devices, you can say that the device can't be jailbroken. You can enforce PIN.
That's what I was just going to say.
Device is encrypted.
When I was doing MDM management and stuff like that, a few years back now, that was one of the things I always switched on was check for rooted or jailbroken devices. If it was, I think it's jailbroken if it's Apple and rooted if it's Android. Whereby that allows you to sideload cracked or sort of hacked software that doesn't necessarily have the licensing requirements on it. Okay, so and how about single sign-on? Is that helpful in making it easier to access and manage stuff?
Yeah, so single sign-on effectively means that you have your one work email address and password that you use not only to log on to your machine or to log into your email, but you can also use those credentials for an array of third-party apps and services that subscribe to use Microsoft's own identity management. So you don't have users needing to remember lots of different passwords, but at the same time, you can also apply those same conditions that we've just talked about with conditional access to log in onto any service that subscribes to that integration. So it means that you can trust the identity and then trust that it is the person on the device that you say it is.
Once it's been established. Does it use certificates and stuff like that to establish validity and sort of,
yes, from a user's point of view, you log on to your machine, you pass the tests if that's requiring MFA to prove who you are, and then yes, you have that token, as it were.
The token was the word that came to mind. I remember from my VMware single sign-on days.
So yes, you're granted a token, maybe it's Kerberos or OAuth, or and then from there, your machine or that session that you're currently using is trusted.
Yeah.
So you don't have to continuously add new passwords or log on to things. That in itself is a great security mechanism, regardless of the fact that you've authenticated to that service using trusted or credentials. But it prevents rogue websites being able to spoof you to a certain extent, because if a user does get prompted for their password, then it's a foreign thing for them. It's not something they have to do on a regular basis.
Yes.
So they're more likely to question its validity.
Especially if they've been told that you don't need to be doing that anymore because this should all be integrated. So
exactly,
if you see that should set the alarm bells off. Going back